Hi, welcome to the Armchair Commander podcast. I'm John.
I'm Jack.
So
So,
you sure are batting 1,000 with these film choices.
thank you. So for our listeners, we went and saw the movie Come and See, and yes, I've been waiting an entire week to use that line. And what a movie! God damn.
It was rather intense.
hmm For our listeners, it's about Belarusian. How do you, how do you say that? Belarusian.
Belarusian,
A
Bel,
a 15-year-old from Belarus. Well, what would later become Belarus in World War II gets drafted to fight in the partisans after digging up a rifle. And he gets more than he bargains for, and that's putting it very lightly.
that sounds like the intro. Like you're probably wondering how I ended up in this situation.
Oh God,
Yep,
God,
that's
yeah,
me.
yeah. The scene where they take a picture of him, that'd be the perfect freeze frame moment. Oh
You
man.
know, I know this film has gotten quite a bit of it's very highly acclaimed and lots of positive reviews to it, but I'll be honest, I just kind of I wasn't that big of a fan.
Oh yeah.
And my biggest gripe does come back to the um the portrait shots that recur in this film, because it's one of those things that I feel like it would have been a very powerful tool had it been like, okay, we're going to start the film with this like portrait shot of Fiora, and I don't know if I'm saying his name correctly. I hope I am, but the main character Fiora, we open the movie with like this portrait shot of him where he's this young innocent kid, and then we don't return to that shot till the very end of the film where he's all PTSD'd out. But the fact that this this shot recurs like every 10 minutes or every 20 minutes, it kind of takes away the power of it for me anyways.
hmm So yeah, it was a little heavy on the portrait shots, I will admit. But man, and the reoccurring imagery of that German spy plane, is that what that was?
Yeah, I didn't have nearly as much of an issue with the plane flying over, just because I understand that they're probably working with not the greatest budget in the world. um, but that didn't bug, like, I'm cool with them reusing that as kind of the like faceless image of the Germans. Like that plane seems to precede every terrible thing that happens to the main character, so I'm cool with that aspect of it. But like the portrait shots for me were just so unsettling that it made me not want to watch the movie, because it's like I can only like stare into the eyes of this person so much.
Yeah, it was Friedrich Nietzsche that said something along the lines of stare into the eyes of Filiora, and yeah, the abyss will stare back. But you think that was the point of the portraits shots, though, to make you uncomfortable, to like confront you, the viewer, directly, I suppose.
Oh, I have no doubt that that was what the goal was. Um, yeah, no, I definitely think the repeated use of the portrait mode was an intentional choice. I think it might have been an improper choice. The thing is that like this this strikes me as a film that like it I don't know if this particular director, what his filmmaking experience was prior to this film was, but it definitely seems like it feels almost as if like somebody who is fresh out of film school was like, I have an unlimited budget to make a film and I'm going to employ every single technique I've ever learned to show how artsy I am.
Well, yeah, I looked up the director of this, and it seems like he quit after this. And I remember reading somewhere that he said, "I've said all I how do I phrase it? I've said all I can say as a director or something," and then he just stepped away.
He's like, I have created Hamlet, beat that, and then walked away even though he didn't.
Oh yeah, after this film, Elem Klimovs felt he'd said everything he needed to say as a director and retired from filmmaking.
You know what? I can't say I'm disappointed by that choice. The other part of it too is that like, so don't get me wrong, I did like the movie. I just don't think it was done well. Like like for example, I was reading when he was going through his selection for actors when he chose the actor for Fiora. He's like, yeah, I purposely chose a teenage kid who had zero acting experience ever before, and I wanted him to experience all these traumatic things and get like real reactions out of him. And I found it hilarious that he's like, yeah, I want like the second part of this of his choice was he's like, I want to do this, but also I don't want to permanently traumatize this kid. It's like, wait a minute, you just said you want to choose an inexperienced person so that they have like a real traumatic response to your scenes, but you don't want them to be broken forever. Like which one is it?
That is a little confusing. I say you can't go easy on them kids personally. You know, you got to throw them to the wolves sometime and watch them fight their way out.
I think it's been all downhill since we banned them from working in the mines.
I agree, Ron Swanson. They've grown soft.
And I think that's one of those things that's like by the end of the film, you can definitely see in his eyes that Fiora's character, I 100% believe that like his mind and spirit is broken, and like what's happened to him is irreversible. Like in the final scene, that is undeniable that he performed that very well. But like the rest of the film, it's very much a like this. I, I'm just taken out of it so often because of how the acting is done, as well as like I don't know about you, but I felt like the dialogue was so fake. Like like I've never lived in 1940s Belarus during German occupation, but like I have a hard time believing anybody talks to each other the way they did.
I mean, yeah, you could tell that they were inexperienced Soviet Union era actors, which, in my opinion, gave the film more charm.
Like, what was the? This is terrible that I've already forgotten it. But what was the female lead's name? Glaza.
Yeah, I'm looking it up. Galasha.
Glasha. Like the scene where they are like they stumble across each other in the woods and they're both just like bawling their eyes out. Like I don't know about you, but I've never felt more uncomfortable in a scene than I have watching that.
Yeah, it did take them a long time to wrap that scene up.
It's just
Like they were just like looked at each other for 6 minutes and like their crying turned into laughing.
yeah, but it was like
Don't get me wrong, that part was cute and all, but did it really take 5 minutes to get there?
yeah, I'm like, and here's the other thing is like I can't say I've ever like gone to the middle of the woods to cry my eyes out, but if I was to go to the middle of the woods to cry my eyes out about whatever problem I was having, if another person stumbled across me, I would immediately leave, or I would like try and hide the fact that I'm having like a mental breakdown. Like,
I don't know, John. It sounds like someone who's gone into the woods and cried before.
shut up. What I do in my free time is none of your business.
But, and yeah, you'd think, of course, I don't know anything about that area in that period of time, but you'd think that hiding your emotions was the go-to thing to do. Maybe not so much among kids, but
Yeah, I feel like Eastern Europeans are not known for their abundance of emotional intelligence, if you will. And before anybody asks me, like my family immigrated here from Latvia after World War II. I'm not saying that to be purposely derogative. I'm saying I've had very, very simple conversations with my grandfather that never got beyond surface level. So,
it's a cultural thing. What was I gonna say?
but like going back to the whole like people don't talk to each other this way. Like, okay, so they do their 5 minutes of back and forth crying in front of each other, and then they turn to laughing. And then it becomes like a name calling competition, and then like Glasha goes up and like basically just like throws herself at Fiora, and he's like, nah. Like that, like when have you ever heard of or seen like like a woman just like bawling her eyes out for 5 minutes, and then like you call her crazy, and then she like grabs your dick and like tries to make out with you? Like that doesn't happen. And if it does, you need to
I
get away
mean,
from that person.
I was gonna say traumatized Eastern European nurse, but again, I don't know too many of those, so I can't really say one way or the other. What are you drinking tonight?
So I am currently drinking some vodka. I figured, just like the last episode, I would try and stick somewhat on theme with whatever we're watching with my alcoholic choices. Uh, I wish I had had vodka when I was watching this film, but right now it's just going to have to suffice.
Yeah, I'm just drinking beer again. Never changed, Jack.
Are you at least drinking some sort of relevant beer, or is it your go-to?
It's Miller High Life.
Ooh, you stepped up from Bud Light.
I know, right? Champagne of beers.
Maybe for the
But
next episode we can coordinate and have the same drink like a cute couple.
yeah, wouldn't that just be adorable? But what the hell was I gonna say? I may be getting ahead of myself here, but the ending scene with the Hitler poster, where he just like loses it and shoots at the poster for a long time.
That was that was something. I think that kind of goes back to my previous statement of like this is a person who's purposely trying to be artsy. Like I think you could have had just as an effective of scene if you just see Fiora lose it and like destroy this picture by unloading his gun into it. But the backwards scroll through time just made me laugh and just kind of took me out of the scene. Like
I thought he was actually going to do that fucking thought experiment where he goes back in time and kills baby Hitler.
I just I don't know about you, but I burst out laughing when I saw Goose stepping in reverse.
It was pretty goofy.
Man, the Goofy movies
But
have
yeah,
taken quite a turn.
yeah, that photo that he stops onto wasn't an actual real photo. It was spliced together with two other photos. But also Hitler's mom looks like Michael Cera.
Now
But
that's a conspiracy theory if I've ever heard one.
yeah,
It's Michael Cera just a
I'm
time.
treading dangerous
It's
waters.
Michael Cera just a time traveling Nazi creator.
Yeah, and so Does this answer the question that he wouldn't go back in time to kill Hitler?
I mean, he doesn't fire another. If I remember correctly, he doesn't fire around
He ha- no, he
after
doesn't.
baby
He
Hitler.
hesitates. He stop. Yeah, he just kind of stops when it gets to Hitler, and he just walks away. I guess that's to show like his how he hasn't lost his humanity in the horrors of war yet. He wouldn't kill a baby, despite the fact that the babies will grow up to be Hitler. Which, like I said, there's an entire thought experiment behind that. Like, would you go back in time and kill Hitler if it meant possibly preventing World War II?
Do you think if you killed Hitler, that there would be like a mega Hitler that would arise somewhere else? And I know it's hard to wrap your mind
Yeah,
around a mega Hitler, but
yeah, I've had this discussion before with more beer, and the consensus is killing Hitler as a baby probably wouldn't do much considering the conditions of post-war Germany and World War One,
like there would have been
and how someone
there
else
would have been somebody to take its place.
exactly how someone else probably would have done it
Like
if not
we
him.
don't know if it would have been to the same extreme, whether it would have been worse or it would have been less bad.
We'll never
But
know.
I think the inevitable path would have been a totalitarian state in Germany post World War One. Like I think that's the one inevitable thing out of this.
There was a Twilight Zone episode, not the good OG series, meh the meh 1980s reboot, where this dude invents time travel and actually does go back in time and kill Hitler, and he just has like a sob fest for most of the episode, like, oh, should I kill this baby? Well, the baby, yes, the baby's Hitler, but the baby itself hasn't even done anything yet. And then, if I recall correctly, he actually does kill the baby, but then he replaces it so no one gets suspicious, and then that baby grows up to be Hitler.
Like there's just Hitler no matter what.
Yeah, it's like what's the word? Self-fulfilling prophecy, where it's set in stone, and that rule of time traveling.
It's like what happens on the timeline is going to happen regardless, but like the details may vary.
Yeah, and my God, the church scene, that was brutal. Getting back to the movie.
I was going to say what was like the most effective scene for you, but I would say that's probably your answer then is the church scene.
Yeah, like it's a war movie, yes, but there's no glory to be had. There's no triumphant victory. It's just horror. And it's no Hollywood bullshit either. Like everything depicted happened in some capacity. Like if I recall correctly, the SS division in charge of policing Belarus were actual criminals sprung from prison, and they actually just went through that country like a weed whacker. I think a quarter of the population was killed. And that was the favorite pastime of them, herding them into the barn or whatever building was the biggest, and then playing like fucking with them, like, oh, you can step out, but we'll shoot you, and games like fun games like that, and then just burning it all.
Well, I imagine when you're committing such atrocities, like you almost have to turn it into a game in order to like wrap your head around it. And I know that's like a seriously like fucked up thing to say, but like I can't imagine any other way of trying to like justify it to yourself in your brain than being like, oh, these aren't actually people, and I'm just fooling around with you know these subhuman beings.
And the movie covers that too, because after they like burn that village to the ground, they get ambushed by the rebels, and like the survivors get brought back, and they're debating what to do with the survivors. And most of them are like, "Oh, it was the SS. They forced us to do this and other bullshit." And one SS commander is like, "Oh yeah, no, we want to do this. Like you're an inferior race, and Hitler is good, and blah blah blah." And he like stood resolute. And honestly, that line was pretty terrifying. The way he just delivered it with zero remorse in his voice.
Like honestly, I feel like that was the best performance in that film. Like
Oh
it's only
yes.
like a couple of sentences, but I he sells it and I believe it, and like there's no point during that speech that I'm taken out of the moment.
Oh yeah, it's chilling. And yeah, they were like ready to burn them, but that one random woman just snapped and shot them all.
Can we take a second to address like I totally get like, oh, you burnt a church full of people, so we're going to set you on fire. I like that doesn't like strike me as odd. What strikes me as odd is like they have these group of prisoners surrounded, and then like in the middle of them like yelling and trying to decide what are we going to do with them, like the camera just like pans to the road and we see a dude like doing his best like Olympic torch run
Oh
impression.
yeah,
I'm like,
that. Um,
where the fuck did you come from?
like who told you to get that? Did you just get that on your own?
Like I was like, where did you get the torch? How did you make it? Like, where did you light it? Why are you lighting it from a different location and running it to here? Did somebody tell you to get this? Like, I had I had so many questions about just this dude who's like running up with the torch. I was like, what? And that's the thing that happens to me a lot in this film, where you'll have something pop up and you're like, wait, what the fuck? Like, why is this here? Like, in the same ending scene when Fiora is coming up on the group of rebels, he comes across the Nazi staff car that's like turned over, has been attacked, and you see like one of the officers has been shot, and then you see like earlier in the scene you see that there's one female with this group of Nazis, and one at first I'm like, yeah, whatever. But I would hazard a guess that like the Einsatzgruppen didn't have like their girlfriends rolling around with them. Like, don't get me wrong, like women definitely participated in the Holocaust and all that, but like I don't think they were participating in a frontline unit like that. But anyways, like we come across the officer's car, and you see the officers that are dead, and then you see like this one female that you already question like why was she there, and like she is like severely injured or she's dead or whatever, and she's just like topless, and you're like, what was this choice?
Like my what I gathered from that is she was injured and took a cyanide pill because there was like vomit running down the sides of her mouth.
It's still it's like I don't like her being dead or dying in that instance isn't what throws me through a loop. It's the choice of like she's naked now. It's like, did the did the rebels undress her after ambushing the car? Like it's not something we see. It's just like seeing it from Fiora's perspective. He's walking, he sees this ambushed car and a topless chick, and it's like, why?
Because of war.
Ah, yes, war, the greatest generator of topless people ever.
Yes. Um, yeah, we don't even see the big rebel hurrah at the end where they attack the bad guys. Yeah, it just Fiora is just walking aimlessly, and then he comes across that.
So
And yeah, like throughout the entire movie, the main character doesn't kill a single person.
well, I was going to say, what do you think about the fact that, this is a war movie, and I don't think a war movie necessarily needs combat in order for it to be a war movie. But I definitely find it interesting that the the closest thing to a combat scene we actually see is the cow in the field scene with the machine guns.
Oh, oh
But
yeah, and I have no trouble believing they actually killed that cow.
oh yeah, like it was made in 1980s Soviet Union. Like they 100% actually killed that cow. Like that's not what's in contention here. But I found it interesting as a choice that we have a film about the Belarusian resistance, but we actually don't ever see the Belarusians fight. And I wonder what you thought about that.
I think I'm okay with it because the focus was more on the oh, Jesus, the civilian side of things and just the horror of the Eastern Front of World War II and what it was like. Oh, yeah. Sorry, I almost spilled my beer. But
I'm going to keep that in for the show, by the way. You almost spilling it,
go ahead.
you almost spilling your beer on
So,
yourself.
yeah, while talking about the horrors of war.
It's okay. I have a glass of Sprite in a separate glass, and I have my glass of vodka, and they look basically the same. And there's been like two or three times this evening where I've grabbed one thinking it was the other, and I'm like, oh God.
That burn.
You're expecting a fizz, and you get a.
Man, what was it? Oh yeah, and I kind of feel like a big battle scene would kind of I don't want to say take away from the point, but it wouldn't be the focus of this movie, which is like I said, the horrors, like the civilian side of the war.
Right, but I don't think when Fiora comes up on the the resistance group, I don't think it would have been an out of place scene to like have him like walk up like mid ambush or like right as the ambush is ending, as opposed to them doing like the mop up for it. But ultimately, that it's not that big of a deal for me. I think that's such a minor thing comparatively. And it's like you said, it's not really the center points of the story.
I did like that those scenes towards the beginning of them just chilling around camp, like doing chores and the training.
See, that's the thing is like, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Defiance with Daniel Craig, which is about a group of like Polish brothers who start a resistance group. Um, and that particular scene reminded me a lot of that film. And I got like super excited because I'm like, oh, this is going to be like OG Defiance movie. We're going to see a lot of Nazis dying, and then all we see is a teenager get PTSD for the rest of the hour and a half. But
Actually, it was 2.5 hours.
I had to watch it in like three different sections. I'll be honest. I had to take breaks watching this film. Um, and that had less to do with my beef about the like technical side of things on this. It was just it's a tough film to watch. There's a lot of very serious and intense scenes in it, and I think this film was created to be an anti-war film, and I think it nails you know it nails the head of the nail, whatever that phrase is. I might have had too much drink. It
Kills two nails with one head.
yeah, it kidnaps a bird and three stones. It does its job of being an anti-war film very well,
Very well.
which I kind like. Honestly, it's kind of shocking considering the fact that you have to think about the fact that at this time Belarus was still part of the Soviet Union, and like this entire film had to go through like the censor process of the Soviets. And I couldn't imagine trying to make an anti-war film with like Soviet approval. Not saying that the Soviets are pro-war or anything, but it seems like that wouldn't be the easiest task in the world.
I think what really did them a lot of favors is portraying it in like a patriotic sense, and like the whole depiction of Germans, like, yeah, this is what they did to us, kind of thing.
Well, it is. They do refer to this time period as the Great Patriotic War. So, if that speaks to the mindset about this conflict at all.
Yeah, that scene where he tries to rob that farmer, and what was he taking? Just the cart or something else?
It was the cart and the horse or the ox. I forgot what animal was pulling it. But yeah, Fiora's a
Pretty sure it
dick.
was the
He
horse.
robbed two of his own countrymen.
Yeah, well, it's the nature of war, I suppose. But how the farmer still helped him out when he heard the Nazis come. He's like, "Oh yeah, bury the gear in this hay and just pretend to be this local boy you drowned last
I
week."
love how he's going through his entire family tree. Like the Nazis aren't going to know whether you're telling the truth or lying about the the like the layout of your family tree.
One scene that I will admit made me laugh is when like they're rounding everybody up and like doing house checks and whatnot, and like, just being asses of themselves. And Floria just stands up, walks across the room, and he's walking out, and out of nowhere, that Nazi soldier just drops in front of him from the ceiling, laughs, and then walks around him.
Hello there.
Yeah, like what was the what was the point of that? Did he just want to scare a poor Slavic kid before killing him?
I don't know, but the that group kind of threw me like them committing their atrocities did not surprise me one bit. But like you'll have like one guy who's wearing a tank top and shorts, and like you have what appears to be some dude who's a local who has sided with the Germans, and he's wearing like a Stahlhelm helmet, just like covered in like hand painted swastikas, and you're like, what the like? Who are these people?
Yeah. And what was that little animal the commander had? Was it like a marmoset, or what
I
was it?
think I'm gonna have to Google this. I think it was a marmoset.
I don't think it was a marmoset. And I'm sure there's like what's the word? Analysis about what the monkey means. Oh, cool! Live ammunition was used.
Take me marmoset. I don't know.
It The Nazi German SS Major Sturmbannführer's type of pet in the film is an animal known as a red slender loris, a mammal species of prosimian, i.e., a primate that is neither a monkey nor an ape. Okay, the more you know.
Are there a lot of those roaming around Eastern Europe, or is that like a
Probably
Or is that like a
not.
North Africa campaign take back?
Probably that. Like, it's probably a gift from another front of the war, probably Africa. Where Now you got me curious about where this red slender loris. Yeah, like then the film really focused on that a lot, and I was wondering what the deeper meaning of this red slender loris is. Okay, so wow, it's native to a small part of Sri Lanka. Then how did it get to the Eastern Front? Now I need to know.
I want a movie about that animal.
Yeah, like his adventure and how he became a Nazi. How did he get radicalized?
It's like the Madagascar Penguins movie, but Eastern Front edition. Listen up, boys. We're going to go
Oh,
commit some war crimes.
Kowalski analysis.
The church seems the most flammable in this village.
And one part that got on my nerves, I guess, is like the hearing loss he got after being bombed, and like how the next hour, half hour of the film was through his point of view, so it was like muted. and that obnoxious "ee" sound. Like I don't need to be reminded I have tinnitus.
I think that kind of plays into the whole, um, like again, it's kind of like the portrait shots that are overdone, where it's like we see Fiora have essentially like a meltdown or a breakdown after each traumatic event. And I'm not here to say like, oh, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, but like I think you only get to pull certain cards or certain moves so many times within a movie before they no longer have the effect you want them to have. And I think that was a problem with this particular filmmaker is that just constantly like I'm going to beat you over the head with this thing that I think is cool.
I want to also talk about that killer Hitler statue, like him and the villagers made of that skull that they put clay around and they like took hair from and made into a Hitler statue, like a jury rigged Hitler statue that was a trap. I really, really wanted to see that go off.
Yeah, that was a little disappointing. It's like we go through all this process of watching them make this and then like watching them like drag this thing across the
Yeah,
fields
lunk it
and we're like
around.
this is going to be a big boom for the Jerrys, but then we never see it again.
They just leave it. Yeah, I was a bit upset at that.
Like there are times where you're like, oh, this like like there's a lot of setup and then there's a letdown, but then there's also times where there's foreshadowing and you don't realize it. Like like when Fiora gets picked up to join the resistance at first. His mom throws this big fit, and she's like, "You might as well kill me and your sisters." And you're like, "Geez, mom, that's a bit much." And
Like,
then like
chill.
45 minutes later, we come back and see that she got murdered, and you're like, "Huh." They alluded to this, didn't they?
Yeah, and the way that was revealed was something like obviously like you the viewer knows something,
Yeah, like
but Floria's
naivete,
naivete,
ha ha ha.
whatever, naivete, and possibly denialism. You're like, oh, you poor boy, your family's probably dead, but he just is dead set that they're on the island, and like they run off to it. Glosha looks behind her once and sees all those dead bodies just lined up against the firing wall, and just
Like, don't get me
nope.
wrong. There's definitely some like I get the point of that entire scene is the denial of the horrors of what's going on because we just got through a long scene of he joins the rebels and then like the rebels go on this mission and the leader is like no you have to stay back basically treating him like he's a kid still and so he has his little meltdown temper tantrum thing where he meets another girl who's about his age, maybe a little older or whatever. And then we see them just like fuck around in the woods. Like do you remember like seeing that was another like portrait shot that really made me unsettled was like Glasha dancing on top of like a wood crate in the rain, but it's from that portrait mode. And I'm like, this makes me feel uncomfortable the way that like something out of place in a horror film is.
I was scared that she would slip off it. Honestly,
Yeah,
it
I
looked
wonder
really
if they had
slippery.
to pay her any like workman's comps claims.
How many takes that took to get down?
But yeah, we get a solid half hour of Fiora still being a kid. He there's danger in his life and he experiences things like the artillery barrage, but for like all intents and purposes, he still hasn't like experienced a quote unquote horror yet. Um, so when we get to the scene where his family and his entire village has been executed, Like I totally get the standpoint of like we want him to be in denial because that is a big ledge to jump off of from the trauma standpoint.
And the scene, the scene of him and Galosha swimming through the muck, man, that drug on.
Everything about this film drug on for me. Like every scene.
But it was that scene in particular, that scene in the poster shooting, the ones that seem to take longer than average.
My my only real beef with the scene where we find out that Fiora's family has been killed is, obviously Glasha, we get this like quick side pan where we see the mountain of bodies. And obviously there's a lot of foreshadowing and hinting at the fact that stuff is wrong, like the house is infested with flies and like everything's out of place and like nobody's there. But like this may be a graphic detail our viewers might not want, but I've worked in a career field that from time to time has to deal with dead people, and the amount of smell that a single dead person generates is truly astounding, and I cannot fathom what an entire pile of villagers would amount to in the realm of smell. So that's the thing that I know it's a weird thing to get hung up on, but that's the thing that struck me. I'm like, there is no way that they did not notice this horrendous smell of like 50 people decomposing.
I guess, and how long were those villagers dead before they got there?
I can't imagine it would have been too long because, like, there's a scene where he pulls that pot of soup out of the kitchen fire.
And it was still warm. That's right.
But, like, you and I both know that, like, I can set up a crock pot and have soup going for days. Like, so it comes down to a matter of how long is that cooking fire lasting. So it could have been a short
Yeah,
period of time, but I'd have to say at least a few hours would have had to have passed.
at least.
But
Hmm.
who knows?
Yeah, and that it was very heavy-handed at the end when it straight up said 629 Belarusian villages were burnt down.
Well, that was the thing I
But
was reading.
fits
The
with the
thing I was reading
style.
about this film was that the filmmaker, he was part of the Belarusian resistance himself, and he was inspired to make this film because he was reading a book about firsthand accounts of people in the Holocaust from his country. And his grand idea was people need to know that the Holocaust happened in Belarus. And I like not to be a dick, but I don't think anybody's under the impression that any of the occupied territories was exempted from the Holocaust, if you will.
I don't know if it's so much as think they were exempted as they didn't know how bad it was. Like I didn't know how bad Belarus had it until I watched this movie.
I guess for me, it's like if you watch a movie like Schindler's List or anything of that nature, like you see how bad like like a concentration camp film, you see like all these horrors. And maybe that's the disconnect here is because we're looking more at like the Einsatzgruppe and like mobile killing teams, which isn't really hit on as much in cinema. But like never in the history of ever has there been a film produced by a country that was occupied or a country that fought against Germany where we don't have like a scene of terror. There's always the like, oh God, the Germans are coming, hide. Like that exist like that is a universal thing in every film with the Germans. That is like these are the baddies, and we don't want to deal with them.
Yeah, bad guys. And skulls on their uniforms.
I'm the bad guy.
The skulls on their uniforms.
That is one of my favorite sketches I've ever seen. Have you seen the
Are we the
Are we the
bad guys? I was
baddies?
just about to bring
What do
that
you
up.
mean? Well, I mean, have you looked at our uniforms? There's skulls on them.
Yeah, there had to have been a moment like that, at least at one point.
It's a shame because the SS really had to go and ruin a cool logo because the skull and like the Death's Head skull predates the SS.
Yeah, yeah, and they also ruined the Charlie Chaplin mustache, the Roman salute, the Buddhist symbol for
The
good luck.
the lightning
Man, they
bolts.
ruined a lot of things.
Well, it's like uh, when we were getting the logo made up for this show, we had a couple of different designs, and one of them had uh, it essentially looked like an SS lightning bolt coming out of it to the like electricity going into a microphone thing. And I just looked at Miranda. I'm like, we can't have that. She's like, huh? I'm like, that looks like the SS markings. We can't do that. That's not okay. And she's like, oh, yeah, now I see it. I'm like, yeah, we need to change that.
How are we supposed to know that the Armchair sub commandos would have that logo? It's two S's. We didn't know it was going to turn out
We
that way.
hadn't watched the movie yet. How were we to know it was a bad idea?
What? It's just the Buddhist symbol for good
What? I
luck.
just really like electromag discharge atmosphere meteorology words.
But yeah, I love this movie
I
personally.
I definitely see why people like it, and I definitely see why it's acclaimed. It didn't do it for me. I will say though, I did learn something new out of this film because
Oh,
because
absolutely.
um like I said, my main criticism of this is that it seems like the director was he was trying to make a cinematic masterpiece, and it's like, okay, whatever. But the very end scene where you get the split frame where you have the two side by side portrait of Fiora and then that one girl who's like bleeding and blowing a whistle.
Yeah.
So I had to look it up because I was so interested by this particular frame. And apparently, there's a special lens that actually creates that shot. It's called a diapetic lens. And what it does is it lets you have two different things, like it allows you to have two different subjects in focus together in the same frame, even though they're in different locations. Um, it's
Hmm.
it's a really
Yeah, I remember
interesting
that shot.
lens. There's a couple of videos on YouTube about it, but the this kind of goes back to it where it's like you can tell that there's a lot of inexperience going on in this film because you know how there's that like wavy haze in between um the two different subjects in the frame. Usually in editing, they'll do some special effects or they will get rid of that so it looks like one image versus in this one where you can very clearly tell that they're two separate images that are just taking up the same frame. So that's my other little pedantic do better quibble.
Is this guy still alive? This director? Oh no, he died in 2003.
I mean, it doesn't surprise me. He probably was
Shame.
like in his 70s or 80s by that point. If he yeah, like if he
70.
fought
Yep, on the dot.
as a resistance fighter.
Man, he was born in 33, so he would have been 10 around the time this movie takes place.
That's insane to think of a 10-year-old fighting the Nazis.
Can't go easy on them kids.
Like I said, everything went downhill once we stopped making them work in the mines. So I think we can get on to the part of the show where we check the thermometer and see what the critics have to say about the film, and then decide whether or not we agree or disagree with the rating. So,
Internet Movie Database says 8.4 out of
okay.
10.
And do we have a thermometer reading or just the IMDb?
Um, I'm looking it up. 90% for critics, but 95% audience score.
So, because you're a fan of this film, and I've already expressed my somewhat distaste of it, I'll let you go forth with your positive review first.
I think 95 is apt.
What are the aspects that
I
you think
yeah,
make it a 95% fresh film?
the fact that it's a war movie, but there's no glory to be had. There's no triumphant final battle. It's just survival, and like there's no Hollywood embellishments either. Just poor 15-year-old thrust into war.
All right. So I'm going to have to go with a little bit of a lower rating here. Um, I think this is a better film than Picadon was, and I don't know how fair it is to compare films. Um, but I know with that film I gave it a like an 80% or a solid 8.0, whatever metric we were using. I think that this film is an 83%.
Oh, okay, yeah. I thought you were gonna rate it much lower, to be honest.
I want to rate it much lower, but I'm trying to be a little objective here. My my biggest
I
complaints
see.
about this is that we have some we have inconsistent acting. There are some great scenes of acting, but there's also some really poor scenes of acting. There's a lot of technical choices with how this film was produced that just really throws me out of it. But overall, like I said before, this film does a fantastic job of being an anti-war film. I appreciate the fact that it doesn't sugarcoat the horrors that occur during the Holocaust. And even though, I kind of made fun of it earlier, it it is important to realize that the Holocaust was more than just Poland or more than just Germany. Like it like everywhere the German Empire touched, these horrors occurred. Um, and I and I think there's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
little countries that get forgotten about in the grand scheme of the story of World War II. So for that reason, I'm doing 83 because it does what it sets out to accomplish. I just wish it was produced better.
And yeah, he did what he could in Soviet Union.
And Soviet Russia,
Movie make you.
right? I couldn't imagine what film trying to make a film under the USSR was like. Couldn't have been easy.
I wonder how many rewrites he had. had.
I'm sure he probably had his KGB agent on like speed dial.
So yeah,
So
I was just gonna say that was come and
that
see.
was come and see. Please do not make me watch that again.
Yeah, I feel like it's one of those movies with Grave of the Fireflies where I'd recommend to people but never
It's
watch
like
it again
recommending
myself.
Schindler's List. Yes, it's a great film, but like
Once
you
is
don't
enough.
want to watch. Yeah, like how many times can you watch traumatizing shit like that? So, seeing as the last two films were, well, the first film was a joint agreement, but this film was your selection. That means this particular one is my choice. So I'm going to pull up our list here, which we're at 115 films now. Like it literally grows by the day. I don't know how we'll ever get through it. And the thing is that like this list, it like you would think there would be a lot of like straight to TV or like direct release DVD movies. No, there's like these are all like legitimate films with like actual like theatrical releases. So it's uh it's not looking good for my choice. I know I wanted to subject you to that one Dolph Lundgren movie, but that might have to wait a while.
Oh man, I was looking forward to watching
I have
that
not
one.
heard great things about it.
Oh, it looks like dog shit.
But I think for this one, I'm going to attempt to try one that is not um, as depressing, and I'm also going to avoid World War II because we've done two World War II
Ah,
ones.
fair. Too depressing.
So
Two depressing World War II ones.
I would say let us watch 1996's Down Periscope. If you
Down
want to pull
Periscope,
up
eh?
and read the description
I
of
just
it
Googled
and
it.
the actor list.
Rob Schneider. Rob Schneider is a submarine captain.
Technically, he's the XO.
Quiet you. Well, all right. This one looks like a fun movie. Patton Oswalt was in this
It's
play.
got quite the 1990s star-studded cast.
Oh, I remember William H.
I forgot.
Macy. Wow. Hey, Toby Huss.
So, for our viewers, the description of this is Down Periscope is a 1996 film in which Kelsey Grammer plays a naval officer who is given command of a down at the heels submarine and must lead an oddball crew of misfits to victory in a war game that will determine his future. And it also has Rob Schneider.
And Toby Huss, aka Cotton
Really?
Hill.
I
Yeah,
don't think
Toby
I've ever
Huss.
seen Cotton Hill's actual, like, I've never looked up his. Oh, he play. I'm looking at him now. He plays a fun character, if I remember correctly. Anywho, that is our film for next week. Um,
All right, I can't wait.
do you have anything before we sign off?
War is hell.
War is hell. Oh, I do. We have an Instagram page and a Facebook page. If you want to go and give those a follow, like, whatever. Also, if you enjoyed the podcast, please leave a review. Those stars matter, and we would greatly appreciate hearing your feedback, such as Jack is a terrible host.
Yep, awful.
Well, until next time, I've been John,
And I'm Jack.
and we'll catch you on the next episode.
Bye.